Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great time. Today's lesson will be about literature, specifically poetry. I hope you find it useful. Enjoy. So first of all, I will give you a definition of poetry. It is a type of writing that uses language to express imaginative and emotional qualities instead of or in addition to meaning. It's basically a collection of words that expresses an emotion or an idea. And no, poetry is not just for girls, and no, poetry doesn't always rhyme. Moving on to the types of poetry, first of all we have lyrical poetry, which is a direct record of a personal experience and feeling of the poet, usually spoken with the first person point of view. Lyrical poetry has subdivisions. The first one is called a sonnet, which is written according to a specific form. It expresses one single idea in 14 lines. Each line has 10 syllables, etc. Here is an example written by William Shakespeare in the picture. The second subtype is called an ode, which is a lyrical poem that praises a person or marks an important event. Here's an example also in the picture. The last subtype, which is called an elegy, it is a poem that laments the death of someone or praises the life of someone. The example is in the picture as well. Moving on to the narrative poetry, it tells a long and large sequence of events, and it also has subtitles that we're going to talk about. The first one is called a ballad, which is originally a song about something. It passes to generations orally. It's about emotional happenings also. The poem Happy Halloween is an example for a ballad poetry. The next one is an epic, which is a long narrative poem of heroism and grandeur. It talks about gods, princes, kings, etc. The last one is a lay, which is about medieval stories, mainly talks about fairy tales, love stories, chivalry, and knighthood. Last type with poetry, we have dramatic poetry. It is basically a drama written in verse, which is meant to be spoken. Here are the types of dramatic poetry. The first one, which is a tragedy, a drama that has a tragic ending like death. For example, the play written by William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. The following one is comedy, and it is in the purpose of entertaining people, make them laugh. A good comedy example is Every Man in His Humor by Ben Jonson. Last one is a dramatic monologue. It's a speech given by one character. His thoughts and emotions are revealed through his action, not specifically the poet himself on the stage. An example for it is My Last Duchess, written by Robert Browning. Moving on to language in poetry, we have literal language, which means the use of the exact meaning of the word. For example, the sky is blue. Figurative language is the use of words that go beyond their ordinary meaning. For example, her hair was silk. Proceeding to the elements of poetry, we have the first element, which is imagery. It is when using descriptive words that evoke the five senses of humans. The visual one, it is when you describe something and give the reader the impression of seeing the thing. She was wearing a beautiful long red dress. The next one is auditory. It is, for example, the flow of the river makes the reader imagine he is hearing the sound of the flow of the river. Olfactory, it is when we evoke the sense of smell. For example, field of roses, their scent is filling the air. Gustatory, it is when we evoke the sense of taste. Sweet cake, tasty chocolate. Moving on to the tactile, it is when we evoke the sense of touch, touching the harsh surface, for example. The organic one, it is when we have a general sensation. I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling afraid, such things. The kinesthetic one, it is when we are talking about movement. For example, the flowers are moving. Element is a metaphor. It's when comparing two things without using like or as. For example, she is an animal when she eats. However, the element called simile, it is when comparing two things and we use the words like or as. For example, she eats like an animal. Another element is synecdoche, which is a manner of naming a thing by another name than of its own. We refer to it in another way. For example, I asked for her hand. It doesn't mean that I asked for her hand, but it means that I asked her to marry me. Or another example, I bought a 4 wheels. It doesn't mean that I bought 4 wheels, but it means that I bought a car. Personification is where we give human qualities to non-human objects. For example, the sun smiled down on earth. I am so hungry I could eat a whole cow. Here is an element where we call hyperbole, which means exaggeration. When we use the same sound at the beginning of the neighboring sounds, it's called alliteration. For example, Sally sold seashells by the seashore. That was it for today's video. I hope you found it useful, going from the definition to the types to the elements of poetry. Of course, I could not mention everything in this video. I can't do that in just one. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to answer all of them. Have a nice time, everyone. Thank you for watching.